Wilson Smith is a senior designer at Nike Incorporated. In his 32-year tenure, he has worked on the design and the development of products of some of the greatest athletes in the world, including Michael Jordan, Andre Agassi, Roger Federer, and Serena Williams, just to name a few. He's designed the Air Jordans 15 and 16 to 17, praise the Lord. And was named one of America's top designers by Black Enterprise magazine. Wilson is also a worship leader at South Lake Church in Lake Oswego. Wilson, I'm so excited to have you here today to come speak to our students. He's going to talk, and I think you might do some Q&A either at the end of your time. And he's told me that when we get to that time, you are more than welcome to ask him anything about what he shares, or even anything as off the cuff as what's it like to work with Roger Federer or Serena Williams or anybody else. So would you please at this time welcome Wilson Smith.
Thank you, Michelle. 212, check them on. Cool. It's a real honor for me to be here and to hang with you guys. This is so good. I was going to say a couple things. Thank you to Michelle. Thank you, Lamont, brother. I love to all you guys. I mean, I was like, that's a matter of fact. It's so good to start a talk with that. So thank you so much. It's very cool. So it's great to be here today. I'm going to talk to you about something. If you look at the way, you've probably heard people talk about about your brain and how you think like a left brain or right brain. Have you heard kind of those zones? The right brain's kind of this creative, crazy thing that doesn't make a lot of sense, and the left brain is kind of more the cognitive kind of rational thinking. And I'm more that right brain guy, and that's kind of like my world. And so I've been a designer, and in fact, could you go to the next slide here? Just kind of, design thinking. This is what I want to talk to you about thinking that way and how it's been applied in my world and how it can be an opportunity of the way you approach things. And it's something that has kind of been happening a lot in corporations. Everybody's saying, design thinking, it's a big deal. And for me, it was always like, that's kind of the way I kind of think. But I'm learning about it, and it's been a fascinating new thing to kind of think about. And by way of analogy, I want to talk about design thinking. I'll just point when we get to it. We look at Roger Federer here. So I mentioned him before. One of the things in sports, they say, keep your eye on the ball. I mean, it's one of the key things. Like if somebody's running out to catch a pass, you got to keep your eye on the ball. You can't be distracted by what's happening tomorrow afternoon or by the stands around you or by the significance of the moment. It's about keeping your eye on the ball. Roger Federer, as a tennis player, he's watching the ball come all the way in, and then he hits it, and for a millisecond, he's looking at the spot where he hit it, because he knows if he did it exactly right, it's going to go to where it needs to go to. If you see that middle slide, he's kind of done this. Actually, go to the next slide. That demonstrates he's on the left side. He's looking at the spot where he hit the ball. And same with Tiger. He's doing the exact same thing. They say that I got a friend of mine who's a single-digit handicap golfer, a really great golfer. But he says the difference between the way he hits the ball and the way a pro hits the ball is like night and day. Because there's a unique sound because they are right exactly where that ball needs to be hit. And so that's like keeping your eye on the ball. You got to be on top of it. And so that's what I'm thinking about in terms of design thinking. Design thinking is about keeping your eye on the ball, which in this case is really talking about the end user. It's talking about who it's all about, what it's all about, what the focus is. So this is like design thinking in the good news. If it's in relationship, if it's in community, if it's in ministry, if it's in whatever you're into, it's applying design thinking about the end user. Who is it that you're focused on? I grew up in the world of architecture. And so this next slide, it talks about in architecture, one thing we say is form follows function. Okay, what that means, it's like if you've ever been in a building that you don't like, or somehow it's not quite working for you, could be it's too dark or it's too, or the lines aren't quite aligning where they need to be aligning, the hallways or whatever. Well, that's because maybe the person did the design but wasn't really thinking about the end user wasn't doing it quite as perfect, and so so it ended up being, maybe it was more about themselves, or, who knows what it could have been about. But regardless, if the form's not following the function, it probably doesn't work too well. And so that's what the whole idea of design thinking, this has been something that was developed out of IDEO, which is a firm in San Francisco, or down in the Stanford Design School. So the whole idea of design thinking, it starts with empathize and empathy. And empathy means you're identifying with the other person. You're like almost becoming the other person. And so when you're in relationship, when you're in anything, when you're giving out, it's supposed to be where you're identifying with that other person. So really the empathy is the key piece to all of that. And then they do, you empathize, you define what you're understanding, then you ideate, you start sketching, you start coming up with a concept, you prototype it, try to get it right, and then you test it. And if it doesn't work, you go back to ideate, prototype, test. You just keep kind of in that loop. And so, but really the key is empathy. And so the whole idea about empathy, that big circle that says empathize, that's really you. That's me. That's our role in design thinking, is empathizing with the end user. And thinking about empathy and empathizing, I want to think about it in three different ways. Notion of call, notion of what you're creating, and a notion of how you collaborate. So the whole idea of empathy, of identifying with the end user in all these settings. The first one I'll talk about is call. And so in terms of call, like it's almost like you've got to, in a sense, be aligned with the thing that fits best for you. I mean, here you guys, we're all like in school and we're like identifying what it is that I'm kind of into. Really pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to what you're into, what are your, here's a big word, proclivities. It took me a while. I didn't learn that word till late in life. But proclivities is like what's your bent, what are you kind of into, what's your natural deal? And so in terms of your calling or your proclivities, how you bent, you got to think about that before you align yourself with whatever, before you become what you're really into. So I want to take you in a little bit of a journey of my own particular proclivities, and so you can go to that next flick. But this is just a little bit of 45 seconds. This is me. That's good. Oh, you had it. Yeah. I'm going to talk over it. So I love designing things, building blocks. I love the Jetsons. Back in my day, that was a big cartoon, so that's what I used to draw. I do things like the Jetsons. That's me in like about third grade. The afro started to grow. The afro got huge when I was in high school. And that's my sister and I having fun together. Loved the Jackson 5. That was me growing up. That was my world. My parents at design school and architecture at U of O. Then I went to London, traveled in Europe and design, and then I traveled in Seattle for a while and worked up there, so that was pretty cool. But still right up school. I loved to paint. I was really into painting, and then eventually I went to work for an architecture firm in Portland. And so out of the architecture firm, I came to Nike. Eventually, I designed some shoes, and I created that shoe called the Outbreak. We sold about as many on top of that table right there. So it was called the Outbreak. But anyway, so I did the Outbreak. But that was kind of my journey to Nike. All right, my man. So we'll go next. But just to kind of explain, so lately, but it's been interesting. Okay, I've been there 32 years, been a while. But what's the image on your left? I've mainly got to work a lot with great athletes, and even what a joy and an honor. Serena was wearing my shoes the last year, so that's been just a total kick as she's made her amazing run, and she's like totally cool. So working with people like herself, but the fun thing that's been happening to me later in my career is that I feel I've been doing things that align even more with where my heart is and what I'm all about, and it's been pretty cool. And that's kind of the identifications on the other side. N7 stands for Native 7 at Nike, and it's a line of products. The 7 stands for consider the impact of your decisions on 7 generations. So that's an Iroquois proverb. It's like if, say, you're the middle generation and you think to 3 generations back of elders, and and whatever you're doing is you're thinking about 3 generations forward in terms of the people, the things you're doing, and so it's very sustainable. So N7 is a pretty cool thing, and what it ends up doing with N7, they end up basically making shoes that fit Native American feet a little better. They sell them at cost at the reservations or at the stores. All the money from all those places goes to benefit Native American youth. So that's kind of how N7 works. Another thing that's been really fun to work on is the Haiti project, which we did, was right after they had their major earthquake in 2010. And so there was a guy from Architecture for Humanity, a guy named Cameron Sinclair, and he said to us, hey, we want Nike, we don't want just your money, we want your design thinking. We want you to like come to Haiti and think of some stuff. So we went down there, and so in our own wheelhouse of like sport, we were working on these cities, these centers of the communities, which were like these structures that house sport for basketball or for soccer, and then the water that came off the roofs went for the water for the community. So it was like these rainwater courts. That was the exciting thing. Another thing I've been excited about working on was in the lower right-hand corner, there's a class that I get to teach at University of Oregon yearly, and we just finished our design studio, our final studio, but it's called Adaptive Design for Athletes, for Adaptive Athletes. So it's been really cool to work with the adaptive athlete. And it's so cool to speak about this adaptive athlete. There was Nike was founded by a couple key people. One was Bill Bowerman. This man, the coach right there. So he's the coach, really the teacher of the track team back in the 50s and 60s. And Bill Bowerman would say, if you have a body, you're an athlete. So that's each one of us. So we all get to enter into that thing. In fact, that's everybody who's breathing on the planet. If you're a body, you're an athlete. So there we go. So that's a cool thing you can think about how you want to reach. But then the next person there that's actually Phil Knight, who was the other co-founder of Nike. And Phil Knight would say, listen to the voice of the athlete. Again, in the context of what we're doing, listening to the voice of the athlete is design thinking. It's basically identifying, you're paying attention to the voice of the athlete. So if you have a body, you're an athlete, listen to the voice of the athlete. That's what I want to talk about. The next slide is like, we're looking at how you creating something in that context and thinking about that. And so I'm going to play a little video right now that speaks a little bit about this class. It'll be about a minute.
I heard 3 pops. Tried to yell grenade. There were 2 that went off underneath my feet. My legs were mangled.
I spent 18 months at war, and I was on my way home. I got in a car accident, and the doctors told me I'd never walk again.
We ran into an ambush. My vehicle got hit with an IED blast, and the next thing I remember is waking up in Germany.
The Adaptive Athlete Program at the University of Oregon in Portland has 15 students and 2 professors working with 3 elite athletes.
The product design program at the University of Oregon is that perfect sort of synthesis and convergence of athletics and academics.
Empathy that would come forth in terms of connecting with the athletes becomes a catalyst for really great design.
It's not just about making objects, but it's about understanding people and understanding how people and objects work together.
We're at Mount Hood and we're observing Kevin Panel here. He's an adaptive athlete.
It's really about an opportunity to address design in a whole new way.
We're just documenting and seeing how he rose.
Tell me a little bit more about the grip.
This is the final panic and put everything on your board stage.
These students did an incredible job. They built and curated collections of devices and apparatus that actually enable athletes to do more.
Anthony Davis, I wanted to help him fly across the waters so he could take gold in Rio.
So my goal this term is to allow Kevin to have a more comfortable and more convenient snowboarding experience.
Tonight was the very last review and it was really exciting.
I got a lot of positive feedback.
Everyone has grown so much in this term. I think that shows in everyone's projects.
Really proud of you guys. You exceeded my expectations.
So that's a little bit of a taste of the class, which is kind of fun. So I'll just tell you briefly about an adaptive athlete, and then I'll move on to my points. I want to finish up here in about 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes, so we'll keep going. This guy, Will Grow, is actually an adaptive athlete, a wheelchair rugby, just an amazing wheelchair rugby player, probably one of the best in the world. He was wounded warrior. He was paralyzed from the chest down. And so, but it's amazing. You connect with this guy the same way as I have with any athlete I've ever worked with in the world. I mean, they're all the same. And this guy, especially one that's really focused like this guy, one of the best in the world. Well, one of the students, a guy, Ryan Fiorentino, was inspired because he felt that Will compromised his body a lot because he didn't have any sternum control. And so when he moved around with the ball, he was doing like that. Ryan created this vest where basically it wrapped around your body and locked into the chair. And so you maybe go to the next one too. And this is actually like Ryan creating the vest, and that's him identifying, that's actually Ryan himself, but he's like wrapping straps around himself, locking into the chairs, trying to feel what it's all about. You know, that whole kind of design thinking piece, becoming that person. So anyway, he ends up designing this thing, and we created it for, there were like 5 guys on the team that loved the vest, thought it was cool. We made home and away vests. They're kind of like underneath their jerseys. And so then right after that, this project won a bronze medal. I mean, they ended up winning a bronze medal. So a student project that started in January had a bronze medal in September. So it's kind of this really cool reality. And then it's like, and so we're excited here, getting ready for Rio. We're working with the wheelchair rugby team again right now. We're doing a lot of stuff for them, gloves and different things. So it's pretty fun. So anyway, so it's been that kind of project. So for me, when you create something, really identifying with the end user. And the last one I want to talk about is collaboration. And when you collaborate, how do you collaborate when you're just, how you collaborate, I believe, I'm going to use this example. So we go to the next thing. This is an example at Roosevelt High School. The way you collaborate, I believe, is that you're all in with who you are. You're all in with what you've got. You bring it. You just bring your stuff, and everybody will bring their stuff. And then we'll see how it all mixes up. And it can be a lot greater that way than if you try to control it or if anybody tries to control it. It's more like let it happen. At Roosevelt High School, basically, there's this great need in North Portland, and basically they had condemned grandstands. Their whole track was destroyed, and their locker rooms were in their uninhabitable shape. 5 people were showing up at their basketball games. They were losing. They're getting ready to close the school. They were totally underachieving on so many levels. A friend of mine said, you're more empowered by the people who believe in you than the people that you believe in. And nobody was behind him. Nobody was really believing in him. And so after this need, what happened was this guy, Kevin Palau, up there in the upper left-hand corner, they were getting ready to do an event in Portland. The Luis Palau organization was going to do an outreach down the waterfront, City Fest. It was back, I believe, in 2008, 2009, 2008. But anyway, they're doing a City Fest down there, and he wanted to do the season of service. So he called me at Nike. He says, "Hey, we want Nike to do something. What can Nike do? Because other companies are doing stuff." So I was like, well, maybe I'll get together a bunch of my friends, middle-level managers, and just let's brainstorm. So Kevin came over. Well, one of the managers, the guy in the lower left-hand corner, his name's Mike Bergman. Mike said, when we came all together, he had this "help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope" moment, where he reached in his back pocket, he pulled out his BlackBerry at the time. He's like, well, my friend Rich Rucker, who's the guy on the right-hand corner, Rich Rucker is the development director at Roosevelt, and they just really have a need. Their track is down, is not work, the track is condemned, and so there's all these issues at Roosevelt. How can maybe Nike could get in there and help them? So that was pretty cool. Well, Kevin, hearing about that, Kevin talks to my pastor, along with other pastors, who was Pastor Kip Jacob in the upper right-hand corner, and said, hey, I'd like to pay some attention to Roosevelt. Let's bring out, let's come together for a cleanup day at Roosevelt. Just kind of show them some love and try to draw some energy towards Roosevelt. Well, anyway, so Pastor Kip he said to Kevin, Kevin said to him, hey, could you get, I want to invite a few pastors here to do something. He said, well, how many people do you need? He said, well, about 500. And Pastor Kip said, well, what if I bring them all myself? And Kevin's like, well, okay. And so Kip kind of stepped out in faith. He preached the next 4 weeks on outreach. Next thing you know, next slide, we had before I get to that, this is just to talk about how a team, when everybody brings who they are to the table. So there's vision, there's the catalyst, there's the resources, the execution. So everybody kind of brings what they are to the thing. And then I think the project manager is like God or something. It's not the project manager is not any one of those people. It's like everybody just shows up. So we showed up that day. There was over 1,000 people, and just kind of doing all they could, save the school $40,000 in cleanup stuff. And so since then, it triggered a relationship between Roosevelt and Southlake, and you have this resource. And so we even have people on staff at Roosevelt. We do mentoring, we do all kinds of things. We show up at all their games. And so there's been just a really cool thing that's happened. And so then, the community's inspired. The school was, pretty much was transformed. A lot of things start happening. All of a sudden, they start winning games. A lot of cool things happen. Nike's excited about the energy. And so you look at what was a condemned thing. We've been wanting to get involved with Portland Public Schools. And so Nike puts in, you can go to the next one, the best track that's north of Hayward Field in Eugene, because they saw the energy around it. Obama's now investing $7.7 million into Roosevelt High School, and because it's academically doing so good and it's turned such a corner. And so it's really exciting to me. Everybody was kind of all in, and the reason being was everybody's thinking about the kids. Everybody's thinking about the young people. Everybody's thinking about, we got to believe in these kids. And you get some people to believe in them, and it explodes. And you're thinking about the end user. So anyway, that's just talking about empathy. When you're doing something for someone, it's got to be in your zone. When you create something, be thinking about who they are. And when you collaborate, bring your stuff, and everybody brings it together. He can do above all we ask or think, because he's at work in the whole thing. So that's pretty much what I want to say. So cool. And so any questions? And this is kind of my world right now, what I'm real passionate about, but anything or not. Yes. Creating a what? Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's on the internet. That came out yesterday. What's so amazingly fun about that and kind of cool is back in the day, Michael J. Fox is wearing. He's like being Back to the Future 2. He stands on the hoverboard and and that's kind of the cool thing. At least back in you guys may not have been born. In fact, you weren't born probably when that came out. But anyway, I was all about that. And that was very cool, so on the hoverboard. But it's like the amazing thing that's happened is that Michael J. Fox himself has become a, what's his disease? I'm so bad. Sorry, your Parkinson's. Anyway, I couldn't quite remember. But in terms of Parkinson's, has been the challenge for him. So he has a problem even tying his laces. Well, now we were able to hand him the first version of that shoe that does it itself. And it's about him. It's about the adaptive. It's about working for everybody. And so it's kind of a cool come around of that story, because even though now we're doing that again, 20, 30, 25 years later or whatever, it's like it now works for someone who really could use it. A body could use it. Any other questions or anything? Anyway, it's an honor and a joy for me to come and share with you guys and just kind of, just hopefully, I want you to feel like whoever you are, just like you be you, because nobody else can be you, and you take you to the moon, because you're the one who can do that. But do it when you do it with the end user in mind. Do it with others in mind. So that's my main point.
It is really refreshing to be hearing someone saying that they've made it so far in an industry and never lost any sort of feelings of compassion or empathy, and that you get to work with people who also have that compassion and empathy. Thank you. That's inspiring for me and surely for all of us. I'm just going to pray real quick and then we'll be dismissed. If you have any questions for Wilson Smith afterwards, he's going to be hanging out for a little while, so don't be shy. God, thank you for giving us this time to be together in this space, to hear what we have heard and to see what we have seen. We pray this in your name. Amen.